Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to Commute Talk. Today, I thought I would talk a little bit about commit messages. That's something that I've been talking about with some people in the last few days, and it's an interesting conversation. So, to me, commit messages are super important um, because I love reading commit messages, and I'm always reading the Git log. Um, I feel like I'm always in Git log somewhere. Whenever I'm looking at some other project, I'm always reading the Git log. If there's some project I'm following, I always read all the commit messages. And I love it when people make good commit messages because that makes it so much easier to follow what's going on a project. And actually, my favorite command, I guess, is git log -- stat, so that you also get this little overview of which files changed in each commit. I love that. Um, but yeah, so commit messages are amazing, and I think that it's they're worth their weight in gold, right? Because you write the code one time, and you're going to read that code a million times. Like, people already accept this, right? You try to write the best code because your future self is going to come here and read it and debug it, so you try to do him a favor. But I think the same exact thing is true about commit messages. Like, you are going to read that commit message a million times because, I mean, at least in long-lasting projects, because you're going to end up here again and again and again as you debug or bisect your way to some regression, or you're like looking for like, why does this thing behave a certain way? You're going to read that commit message again and again and again and again. Like, if your project lasts for a few years or more, this is unavoidable. So you should definitely put at least as much care as you do in, say, like variable names and code comments. You should put at least as much care in your commit messages. And if you get accustomed to using tools like git blame, for instance, which allows you to annotate a file so that you see which commit was the last commit that touched each line of that file. Like, look into git blame if you never use it. It's amazing. When you're used to tools like that, then you start to really see the value of commit messages, because I just love the ability to go and look at some individual line in a file that does something, and it looks kind of weird, and then I can just look up that commit and see like a nice, maybe terse or concise, but still a nice explanation of what was I trying to achieve in this commit. And I see so many projects. I mean, this is just depressing that I see so many projects where they have commit messages to say like fix stuff, or like fix bugs, or like refactor this or that. Like, maybe that's one of my biggest pet peeves, when people just say refactor something in a commit message. You're saying nothing with that. I don't know. It's irritating word to me, refactor. I mean, it's irritating when you don't explain what you're refactoring. Like, what is now factored differently, right? Like, what did you change? Did you change object model, lifetimes, some other relationship, control flow, whatever? Like, tell me what you're refactoring. Anyways, so definitely that's something that is hugely valuable, and I try to keep a very consistent format for my own commit messages, that they always start with the one line that's supposed to be like the most descriptive possible thing that I could write in one line about what I'm doing. And sometimes I get a little bit lazy and I only write that one line, but I would never, ever, ever not write that one line. The one line is holy, right? So what I like to do is I like to sort of decide what's the general category, or like the narrowest scope of this patch that I can, or this commit that I can say that this is about. So for instance, if something touches only one class, I might say like class name : and then use the remainder of that line to describe the change I'm making to the class. If it's more about a whole library, then I would say like library name colon, um, or like kernel colon or whatever. But always putting a category for what the change is about, because that helps me later on when I'm like looking through commits and I know that like something went wrong in this range. Like very often you find yourself debugging something that like, oh, I knew that this thing worked back 3 weeks ago, and then when you're looking through the commit log 3 weeks ago, it's so much easier if you can like immediately weed out things that are not relevant. So if you've been consistent and good about your commit messages, there's like a very high chance that you can do this like immediately. Like you can just weed out tons of these commits and like narrow down what you have to look at. And then of course, you can use tools like bisection to help you. But very often I'm able to just eyeball the commit log and figure out where a problem happened because of these specific commit messages that just narrow down what happened where. But then I also think that while the one line is great, it is also even greater to write more. But like I said, I'm not always a good boy about that. I should be a better boy. But sometimes I'm just in a hurry and I rush it. So something I should work on. But whenever I review pull requests, for instance, I'm always really happy when I see that people are adopting the style of commit message that the project uses. In Serenity, because you're really doing everyone a favor by writing down this type of information. And I really appreciate it. And I promise you that unless you disappear and never work on the project again, your future self is going to appreciate it at some point as well. Let me just drive around this guy here. Alright. He was going a little slow. Yeah, so that's those are my thoughts about commit messages that I had right now. And of course, I didn't mention, but I also find it really tasteful and kind of important to write your commit messages as like properly capitalized full sentences, with punctuation and stuff. Not because punctuation has value in itself, but because switching your brain over to writing in that mode, I find makes me write better. So it doesn't end up like this kind of sloppy IRC communication, but I'm actually taking the time to think about what I want to say. And like I said earlier, I really do think that commit messages are just as important as variable names, function names, and comments in the code. And I think that it's a mistake to treat commit messages as a second-class citizen in that regard, because based on personal experience, I end up reading commit messages just as much as I read code. So maybe everyone doesn't do that. Maybe that's just a personal preference, but like I just love commit messages. Love them. So those are my thoughts about that. What are your thoughts about that? I would love to hear how you do commit messages, actually. It's always interesting to hear from other people. And let's talk about it. Yeah, I am going to get back to driving, so I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for hanging out with me on the